of the Region 9 Board to order for November 19th. And our first order of business is approval of minutes from October 22nd, which was our regular board meeting, and the October 29th infamous joint meeting of the boards. Someone want to make a motion? That?
Sure, I'll move. You want to do both together, or?
I have no preference.
I'll do both together.
Okay. So there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any additions, corrections, comments relating to either set of minutes? Mr. Hocker? No?
No, I ended up being responsible for both.
Oh, so you did them yourself, so.
Well, sort of.
Okay.
The one from the 29th was sort of patched together. Anyway, it's good.
Okay.
Good.
So hearing nothing, no comments, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Both abstentions or just one, Glenn?
Both.
Both. Okay, that brings us to item number 3, which is student comment. So instead of having a student comment, we'll comment on the student, who is Max Munson, and he's starring in the JBHS musical Kiss Me Kate, which will take place beginning this weekend. And so I would encourage everyone to attend, get out and support and attend the musical. It's always a good time for board members and for our members of the public and the administration and the staff too. Rumors are they get in for free, but okay. That brings us to item 4, which is public comment. Would any member of the public like to be on Cablevision 78? Please stand at the podium, wave to your family, and give your name and address, please.
My name is Suzanne Crivet, 86 Black Rock Turnpike. I just wanted to say that I'm going to miss the board members that are leaving, and what a value that they've contributed to the school. And I attend all these meetings, so I know this. And I'm going to miss you that are departing or already have. I'm going to miss you, and so.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Hearing none, we are on to item 5, which is board member comments.
Start here?
Maureen, we could start.
I would only echo what Suzanne said. I wanted to note that both Chris and Vance were the first people who welcomed me when I was elected to this board, and I found their comments then and throughout my time here to be thoughtful, insightful, and wise, and we will dearly miss them.
You know what she said?
Okay. So then, as part of the board member comment, I also would like to thank our departing board members. Vance was our most recent chair, and he has contributed greatly to this board over the years. I was trying to think about it. So you were chair when the turf field was put in, no?
Actually,
Chris was chair? No, Chris was on the building committee.
No, when it was finished, I was chair.
Were you?
Yeah.
I was the chair of the building committee.
And you were chair of the building committee. Okay. So, yes, thank you for your balanced perspective. You have always presented the best of the board, and I think that says a lot. You really have contributed greatly to this board, and I Thank you. And on behalf of the board, we would like to bestow you with the limited edition Region 9 Crystal
Do I open
Apple,
it now?
which is a collector's item.
Let's, come on, everybody's got to see what.
I would like
Well,
to
wait
see
a
it,
minute.
Vance.
There might be another one presented.
But, well, they're, in
Maybe,
fact,
maybe they're
will
different.
be.
It could be they're different. Who knows? It's an apple.
Very nice.
I will treasure it.
Is it personalized, Vance?
Board member, it says board member.
It's not. And also, Mr. Hocker, who, aside from Kathy Gombos, has been here longer than just about anybody I can think of. Again, your value to the board has been significant, and you will be greatly missed. I don't think I'll be able to look at another policy or bylaw without thinking of whether the commas are in the right place and whether it should say may, shall, or should.
That's my legacy.
But,
I think it's much more significant.
well, again, I served with you as chair as well, I think. And again, your insight and your value to this board is extremely significant, and I deeply appreciate all you have done, and thank you. And again, on behalf of the Region 9 board, this might not be a one-of-a-kind, but it's still the limited edition
It's a limited edition.
Region 9 Crystal Apple.
Well, let me make sure. I mean, I've been, I'm surprised you still have any of these after all the board members I've been through. Oh, no, there it
Buy 'em
is.
in bulk.
There it
We
is.
have a crystal apple tree out behind central office.
There we go.
There's Crystal
Thank you
Apple
very much.
Orchard.
Oh, no, and again, thank you both for your service. I will say that Mr. Coppinger gave direct orders not to be acknowledged in any way for his years of service. But he's not here, so I'm going to acknowledge him anyway and say that, again, Paul was someone who served on the board during a very tumultuous time on the board, and then left, and then actually didn't get enough. He came back for more and served the second time. And again, I think that his contributions to this board are significant, and that he will also be greatly appreciated. And whether he likes it or not, we have a crystal apple for him as well. Even if I have to throw it at him to get him to take it, we will make sure that he has it. And so, again, for all of our departing members, thank you. Thank you on behalf of myself, thank you on behalf of the board, and thank you on behalf of both of our communities and our school community. And so I don't know if either one of you have any departing words you wanted to share, or just
Sure. Or
a
pass
wink
up
and
an
a nod,
opportunity.
whatever, but
Yeah,
I think it's certainly warranted.
I do. All three of my kids went to Barlow. They all had wonderful experiences. They're three very different people. They found three very different places in Barlow to grow and to learn. And they've all, didn't happen right away, but they all, at some point in their college careers have said, wow, I was really well prepared for this. And that's because of what you guys do, and I'm really proud to have been part of it. And thank you for putting up with me. I appreciate it. I've learned as well to, as I was saying, to embrace ambiguity. Thank you for teaching me that. I'm still learning, you know, because I've always tried to eliminate ambiguity, but But we'll, that's a work in process, and I hope that I will continue to be invited to Barlow Palooza. Thank you.
Open invitation. Mr. Hocker, do you have any?
Oh, yeah, it's been a privilege and an experience, and it's, you may not realize that my involvement with Barlow, aside from being a parent, goes back to Coppinger's first term, because I got dragged into sort of helping the then chair in some communications aspect, because they were trying to scratch together enough additional money that they could complete the building project or have the building shut down by the building inspector, which was a very real threat at the time. So I've been doing something Barlow related for, like, I'm thinking about it tonight, 15 years. So to sort of no longer be doing that is going to be a bit of a shock. Now, Vance and Paul had the right idea. They quit while they were ahead. I didn't quite get a chance to do that, but that's quite all right. Do I have another second?
You have?
Okay.
The floor is yours, yes.
I saw a news article about a town in Connecticut that they flipped the party control of the school board in this last election from 3 Democrats and 4 Democrats and 3 Republicans to 4 Republicans and 3 Democrats. And all of the three of the 4 Republicans were brand new to the board. And when it came time to elect the chair, the holdover Republican nominated one of the holdover Democrats. And there was such an outcry about he's a traitor and that's not what we voted for and all this stuff. And I'm reading this and I'm going, God, I hope this never happens here. I mean, it was just, and so it made me think about how typically this board and the other boards have operated in a nonpartisan fashion. And long may that continue. And also to realize that we're all on the same team. And I'm not talking just about the board, I'm talking about the board and the administration and the staff and the students. We're all on the same team. And, it's unfortunate human tendency sometimes to square off into different camps and different flags and different loyalties and all that stuff, but we all know better than that, and I hope it continues.
Well, again, on behalf of all of us, okay. On to discussion and possible action items. So, item A is update on the annual audit, and Mr. Rice, am I correct in saying that we're gonna table that, or?
No, we can provide an update.
Wait a minute, backtrack. The chair went too fast. I skipped right over, because I put an X on it, because I do that when I get to an item, but I just skipped right over. So we have the curriculum director, the assistant superintendent's report, and that's you, Stephanie, and I apologize.
I think
I'm
that was
sorry,
my
I
role's
just-
title in 2006 and before. So I'll begin by also thanking our departing board members. I have really appreciated your contributions and your thoughtful questions and your kindness over the years. So thank you very much for your service and for your great support of our schools. So my report this month, as you can see, includes an overview of the professional development activities on November 5th, which was election day. I highlighted the activities that specifically included Barlow teachers and the many K through 12 things that we had planned. So a lot of our curriculum revision work includes K through 12 vertical teams, and so a lot of those groups were at work on that day, and a few of them had full day release, even though Barlow technically hadn't released. I'm going to highlight the work of the 6 through 12 STEM team, and I've also handed out 3-year curriculum revision goals for some of the larger K through 12 teams. This is not the entire document. These are simply the larger vertical teams that have a single goal. So for instance, for math or for English language arts, the goals are separated by level, but you can see here the 3-year goals for the larger teams. So I'm going to connect the November 5th activity of the K through 12 integrated STEM department. So in this building, that consisted of Ryan Paola, who is involved with the engineering and robotics courses, and then the 2 middle school integrated STEM programs. And we're really excited about this work because this year I've hired a consultant from Sacred Heart University to work with our teachers, and that provides us the insight of someone who's in a university and who also has an eye towards the business world in order to inform what we're doing with our students beginning in 6th grade. And so on November 5th, after the consultant came in and observed the teachers in action and gave them feedback and sat down and talked with them, on November 5th he spent the day sort of saying, so you're doing all this great work, what will it lead to? What is the vision for this program? And together they were crafting a vision and a mission for the integrated STEM program. So connected to that, they created a 3-year goal plan, which you can see in the other document that I handed out. And the hope is that this work will better align the 2 middle school programs. We know that one of the middle school programs is Project Lead the Way, and the other is more of a homegrown program. That's the one in Reading. And so the more that we strengthen those programs, then the stronger the Barlow program can be, because the foundation will be that much stronger. We've already seen that there's greater gender equity than there was even 5 years ago. So ultimately, I would love to see this begin at the elementary level. Right now it's a 6 through 12 program. So I think that's exciting work ahead.
Stephanie, is there any area where there is a difference between what's in Easton versus Reading schools?
Oh, sure. That could really be a whole different agenda item. I have a table actually that shows the differences between the 2 K-8 districts. The language offerings we know are different. Reading has Project Adventure at the middle school. Easton does not have that program. Reading has a gift program. Easton does not have a gifted program in the K-8 schools. There are some staffing differences.
How does that affect the normalization that has to occur when they're all going into 9th grade? Is there a big gap that the 9th grade teachers find when
Would not say that they find a big gap. I would say that it probably feeds into a future conversation that we should have at a curriculum meeting related to language offerings, and specifically the fact that students can't take Latin 1 currently here at Joel Barlow, and that means that really Easton students, unless they somehow take a self-study outside of school, are not going to take Latin at the high school level unless they're able to jump into a hybrid course and be ready to take that on. Other than that, I don't think that the difference in offerings make a big difference when they get here. Certainly the feedback we get related specifically to the different STEM programs is that the kids come in enthusiastic about pre-engineering, but the program gives them slightly different skill sets that need to be addressed once they get into the program here. So they're using slightly different tools, they're using slightly different software programs, and we would like to align those.
I have 2 questions. So just to dovetail somewhat on Cheryl's, are we still of the opinion, Tom used to always say that students from Reading and from Easton enter Barlow in very different places, but at the end of the road when they graduate, they all seem to kind of come out, you know. And so
There are
the
not
question
noticeable
is,
differences between the 2.
are we still of the opinion that that is still occurring, that even though there are some foundational differences coming in, when they leave Barlow, or when they exit Barlow, they are all of equal preparedness for college.
There are some differences in the K-8 programs between the towns, and I don't think we see a major difference in preparedness or in the outcomes when they leave Barlow.
So that was number one. And number two, I ask this question every year, and I always wonder why, when we do the calendars for the schools, and Barlow does half-days on Wednesdays for PD, because that's the way we do it, and then the other two districts have days off when they have full PD days. And I come back to this every year because I wonder, like, so when the other two districts have a Friday off, then we pull teachers from Barlow and we get subs for them so that they can participate in PD, which, again, if we are all of the agreement that PD has value, I wonder at what point we can come to a unification of a strategy for PD, rather than this kind of hybrid thing where we're pulling teachers and we have subs and we're doing this. Doesn't it make sense at some point for our calendars to align so that when you want to do PD, all the teachers are off together, if we're going to do that?
So you might remember that the number of early dismissal days are different between Region 9 and Easton and Reading. So for the 4 early dismissal days that are in common from February until May, I do my best to arrange PD activities on those days. But on the early dismissal days, it's quite difficult with the different school schedules to have teachers travel at the end of their contractual day and still have time to work. So it really amounts to about an hour and a half by the time they get into the same place. So while we never like to pull teachers from instruction, doing it on a day where at least some of them have an early dismissal day, or some of them might have an early dismissal day and others have a full day, means that they're missing less time from students. But to your point, I think it's something we should continue to talk about both in professional development meetings and the calendar meeting, because the calendars are slightly different.
And it wasn't meant to be a criticism of what you're doing. It was meant to be more of a, isn't this where we should be going, or how we should be thinking about
Yeah, it's,
PD?
it's
Because
challenging.
It's been
We
going on
do
for
our
years,
best.
and it just seems like, and every time, because I have sat on the calendar committee many times, and you go there and they're like, so this is your calendar, and this is what you guys do, and this is Reading's, and this is what they do. And I know a lot of it is contractual, because contract says they get X number of half PD days and whatever, but I guess I would just, from my individual perspective, would encourage that we have greater discussions to that end, that maybe at some point we can kind of have a more unified approach that makes sense.
The contracts are different, and that also plays a very definite role in the scheduling of the days in terms of where they fall on the calendar. But I agree with you. Yes, the more that it can be in common, the better.
We are, the administration is working on already preparing topics for discussion when we go into contract negotiations this summer with the 3 union, and that is one of the things we're going to want to talk about.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. So now we can jump to where I wanted to jump before, which is, Mr. Rice, did you want to
Yeah, we can cover.
give a brief update on the audit?
Yeah, so the audit committee did meet this past week with the audit partner from RSM, Scott Bassa. I know that Todd Johnson, as committee chair, had intended to provide the board an update on that meeting, but he was unable to make this meeting tonight. And Cheryl, I believe you
Yep.
were planning to stand in Todd's.
That's right, and I could provide an update for audit or budget, if you want me to. Yeah, so for audit, we discussed primarily a calendar. I think there were some slight delays, primarily due to, new staff, but nothing that the audit partner identified anything significant. So overall, we're on track. We're slightly behind from a scheduling perspective, and we do have the positive add that there is no, last year there was a delay due to the state providing the final certified actuarial reports as related to the retirement plans. We don't have that delay this year. So really, once we get through the minor inconsequential scheduling delay, we should be in good shape. So nothing new, no new auditing standards to keep in mind. There were a couple things we probably have to look at next year. And I think what we're planning to do is the audit committee is going to review the draft financial statements ahead of time. That's going to be provided to the committee. And then we'll put on the agenda for December meeting for the full board to approve the reports from the state. So that's 2 financial reports, I think, and there was one other, I think that's just the 2 financial reports, right? Yeah. So overall, we're in good shape, and we discussed, where we are in the progress, and then I can provide a budget committee board member comment. I don't know if there's anything else you want
So
to add.
we still plan to have the auditor come next month and give us a,
We're going to the audit committee is going to try to meet telephonically, at least we're going to get the draft financials first. We'll probably try to schedule a conference call that would be available to the public from one of the school locations, and then meet with the full board, presentation of the auditors of the financial statements to the full board for December.
questions relating to the audit? Okay, hearing none, thank you. So we are on to letter B. Not letter B, letter B. Strategic school profile.
The strategic school profile is put together by the State Department of Education, pulling data from us or from what we report to them, or from how our students are performing on state mandated assessments. And then it's made available on edsite.ct.gov, the State Department of Education's site. We're required by statute to present to the board after the 1st of November, but draw your attention to, this is the 17-18 data, because the state has not yet posted the 18-19 data, and we actually contacted the director, who's very responsive, and he says they just haven't gotten around to it yet. They are not a lavishly overstaffed department. So we don't actually have a presentation per se. We're just making this copy available to the board.
And so, are you aware of any significant or marginal changes to this report compared to the report that the state hasn't put online yet for us? And I guess just for everyone, this is actually a statutory requirement that this report be given by the superintendent each year, the first meeting after November, with all of this information, and there's a vast amount of information. But I guess assurance from the superintendent that
I don't believe there's any substantial changes that would merit concerns on our part.
anything
No.
on our part.
Yeah.
Okay, that is great. Any questions on the school profile? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to item C, which is the infamous Prouder report.
Yeah, I prepared a one-page that I put on the desktop of the board members' space, and then there are additional copies over near Ms. Powell. So Dr. Prouder is a demographer. You can read the report. He his task for us is to give us a notion of where he thinks our student enrollment is going. So I've shown you that in 2018-19, our actual student count was 875 students. And Dr. Prouda projected that we would have 864 students, a drop of 11. We actually have 855 students that we reported in our October 1 count. That's the data we sent to the state, and I looked it up on the 18th, and our number as of yesterday was 854 students. You can see that what he's showing you here is the cohorts as they move into grades 9, 10, 11, 12. So I've coded them in color so you can see once a group of students enters the high school, that cohort tends to be very stable. Most families don't want to move their kids once they start high school, so they'll try to organize their own lives to get their kids through graduation. But we do see that the projected enrollment will continue to decline over the next 6 years from, and as you can see, he's showing us drops of 10, of 23, of 27, of 37. So that's part of, that'll be guiding the work that the assistant principals and the head of school are working on now for presenting to you a plan of right-sizing the staff, the support staff, the programs as the number of students goes down. Then looking further into his crystal ball, we see that we get to the bottom of the valley in the year 25-26 and then start to repopulate. And we can already see that in our elementary school enrollments, pre-K, K, 1, 2, ticking up a bit. If we were to go back to the high water mark at Barlow, we had our largest enrollment at Barlow in the year 2013-2014, where we had 1,068 students in the building. We currently have 214 fewer students, and if we go forward with his projections, recognizing that's all they are, they're projections, we will be down by 381 students from 13-14 when we get up to 25-26. So a high school with plus or minus 700, 710 students, there are many positives in that for community sense of belonging, the opportunity for staff members to know all the kids by name. There's some virtues there, but there's also the reality of how do we navigate down to a faculty size appropriate for that. What are the implications for the programming that we'll offer when we have fewer students? How does that impact our elective course offerings, our core class sizes? And that's the challenge to the administration to land the plane in a way that is ultimately beneficial to the kids. But this is a natural demographic curve that you have more kids, you have fewer kids. And we see that what we've been talking about for several years now will continue, this steady decline until we turn the corner and start rebuilding. So if you can read the whole report if you like, if you want to get into how Dr. Prouda's methodology operates. But we're expecting to decline again by about 23 students from today to sometime next year.
So, refresh my memory, I think last year, projections, we had more students than we were projected by Dr. Crowder, but it looks like this year we're down 10 or 11, 10 additional students, I guess, from what
Right.
the projections were.
Right.
Am I reading that right?
Yeah.
'Cause you have 11 and then 9.
Yep.
and
He had,
54.
he had projected that we would be at 864 students. We're currently at 854. That could be by the end of the year, we're somewhere between those two
Yeah,
numbers.
no,
Yeah.
and I think that's the point, is that it doesn't always end up to be spot on each year.
Right.
But it does seem that over the long span, the trend has been
Right.
fairly accurate.
Yeah, if you look over a multi-year view, you'll see that we have been reducing the total number of students since the year 13-14, and if we look forward 5 or 6 years, we see that continuing.
Okay. Any questions on the Proud report?
I guess just building on that, but then it does spike, if you look at 2029, 2030, there is a little bit of a spike, so to the extent that, so essentially the K through 8 schools will be sending more kids in the later years, so you almost have to, to the extent that you adjust the staffing or the resources accordingly, you're also have to be prepared in 5 years' time, you have to then spike it back up, so.
Right, so good observation. The implication, as I see it, is you don't want to come up with a way to downsize that commits you to not being able to grow back out, which is why we're calling it right-sizing. We currently, in all of ER9, today we have 2,596 students, and adding up Dr. Prouda's projections for the year 29-30, the total would be 2,872. So there will be a reflation, I guess. But there's so many factors involved in what companies move in, how does Sacred Heart, I'll say it again, I think these two towns should be over at Sacred Heart's HR department saying, hey, we've got great schools and great homes, come live with us, and trying to promote, your two towns are real assets, and helping people understand what they could be getting in community, in homes, and in schools.
Okay, thank you. So we are on to the main attraction for the evening, the school climate survey results.
That will be,
That would be Ms. Damaris
and Mr. Penske.
and Mr. Pinsky.
So, first off, I would like to thank Mr. Hocker, Mr. Hancock, for sending us your notes. And I'll get a little Brooklyn, but they represent what we want of every school. And the other piece, I do get emotional. I really do.
It's okay.
It's the climate. Mr. Hocker set us up for our climate presentation. And part of that is the questions we ask one another. So, in how we work as a community, in asking questions and really listening to one another, how do we use all that we learn to become better? And that's really what we're working at today. We have the 3 C's posted. And I just want to get started with, by paraphrasing Dr. Richard Park. He writes, the vision is first that the school will be a community, a place full of adults and young people who care about, look after, and root for one another, and who work together for the good of the whole, in times of need and in times of celebration. Every member of the community holds some responsibility for the welfare of every other and for the welfare of the community as a whole. And this really guides our thinking. And as we move through, we provide nurturing and a supportive learning community. This remains our focus, community. complexity comes into play when we look at data. There's so many variables at play. There's the number of respondents. There are events outside school. It's the time of year. Our purpose tonight is to take about 15 minutes to share a slice, and only a slice, of the work the Joel Barlow Climate Committee is doing. We'll look at some of the data, we'll note some trends, we'll identify areas of complexity, we'll share programs in place that promote a positive climate. So, as we do this work, it is not only the school doing the work, families are doing this work, students are doing the work, the school, and the larger community. The structure within ER9, so we have an ER9 Climate Committee. Darlene Wallen, an assistant principal at John Reed, is the facilitator for that. Within Barlow, Julie McKay and I are the climate specialists as the assistant principals. And we have a climate committee. That climate committee is made up of parents, students, staff, administrators. So the ER9 community and the boards of education all made a commitment. They all agreed that we are committed to creating and maintaining a physically, emotionally, and intellectually safe educational environment. The Climate Committee, again, is just one of these sectors working to improve and grow our community. Okay? Our words and actions matter each and every day. So here we go into the data itself. So some people say that not getting responses is a sign that things are working. I'm not convinced that we're going to go by that principle. But if we look at the number of respondents, there were 86 respondents that identified Barlow, okay, as being a Barlow parent. We had 55 members of the staff, so that includes every adult in the building, not just teachers, and 653 student respondents, 75% of the student body. That lets us know that that information is going to be solid. We also have a plan, or we're working with central office to try to boost the staff and the parent numbers, the respondents. So if we take a look at the parent survey trends, we note an uptick in the indicators connected with respect. Teachers make a point of noting when students do the right thing. The goodness of our students is being shared with parents and the community at large. Parent respondents indicate that they are more comfortable sharing their ideas at Barlow. And this may be an outcome of ER9's district-wide focus on improving communication, which was a point of emphasis last year. So you can take a look. The information is on the slide. More parents feel like there are trusted adults in the building for their child. They feel respected by the administration, and they feel that their child's peers treat others with respect. These are positive trends. Also, you should note when I compiled this and put it together, the only answers that I took were true and or above. It's like very true, quite true, true. The sometimes true is not included in our percentages. We held ourselves to that high standard. You'll also note that 10% of respondents noted that their child was the target of hurtful social media communication. That is still high, but it is down from the two prior surveys of 20% and 21%. Social media remains a target area, an area of focus. parents also noted and consistently know or identify if they want something, it is school safety. Okay, 84% stated that they feel the school is physically safe. That was up from 77% in 2016, 2015, but it was down from the prior year. So we'll look at some staff trends next. The staff tends to agree with the parents that the majority of our Barlow students respect the differences of their classmates and that the adults in the building feel respected by the students. We continue to need to work on reducing the amount of exclusionary behaviors that occur within our community, and that's going to be an area of focus. I'm going to move to some student trends. Our students recognize that Barlow sets high academic standards, and more students are willing to step in when witnessing mean behaviors. This is probably the outcome of the work they're doing in the middle schools as well as the work we're doing at the high school. Okay? And this is where Jordan is going to lead us through an exercise in data complexity. So last year, the students and the parents worked to refine some questions so that we could get more detailed information instead of these general comments. And I'll turn it over to Jordan.
There were a lot of issues we could have chosen to focus on, but we chose one in particular, at least for tonight, to show how the data can be complex and it deserves even further. So the data we have provides some insights. There's some serious limitations to the data, but also a number of opportunities for us to explore a little further. So one of the questions, question 60, asks students to rate their stress level on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the worst. And you can see that the trend is pretty clear with respect to their responses. But how do we define stress? How does each person praise stress? These things can be very different based upon the individual. But luckily, some of our questions allowed us to push a little further. Question 63 asks what factors contribute to what you would categorize as unhealthy stress. Again, that term can be defined in a number of different ways, but the percentages made us think and ask a lot more questions. Obviously, keeping up with academics was a very large stressor for the students in keeping their GPA up. Now, the question before this on the survey asked students what factors interfere with getting their coursework done. And there were a lot of responses, but the leading factor, cited by 70% of the students, was procrastination. Certainly not the only factor, but that was interesting in and of itself. And so some of us asked, well, how can we dig a little further into them? And how are students procrastinating? Because there's more than just one way. So took some data on a sample of 11th and 12th grade students. And this may be interesting to some people, but it's still limited as well. It's only averages. And that the average student in this sample was spending about just shy of 4 hours a day on their phone. Now, we also took some data as which apps were being used. It might not be a surprise that Instagram and Snapchat were among the most popular. Also, we decided to take some data on how many of our students were taking a cell phone or computer to bed with them. This begs more questions. How's that impacting sleep patterns? How does that impact mood, the way they phrase different stressors, their capacity to deal with different stressors? But we wanted to push a little deeper as well. When we break this data down, this data was taken on October 24th, and it represents, we looked at 7 or 10 day averages. So the 3 hours and 52 students, staff, parents, to help them. Because as you look at this, and it might be tough to read from where you're sitting, but those are minutes on the bottom. So 22% of our students are spending between 4.7 and 7.3 or 7.5 hours a day on the phone. Could, with a few action steps, could we have students reappraise how they're spending their time and maybe make it a little easier to meet their obligations? So, but the questions still remain. That's one of many factors. And within this data are individual students. We don't know how often they're reflecting on how they're using their time, what their outside obligations are, whether they work, whether they have support in different areas of their lives. So recently at a school climate committee meeting, the most recent one this month, we decided to make time management one of our focal points. What can the staff do to help promote better time management? What can parents do to help support students manage their time better? And what can students do? Now, this was only one topic in the data that we looked at. And there was other data on stress that's been broken down as well. So when we pass out some of the information from each of the surveys, we just wanted to present it in this context that it requires further looking into. We want to talk about it if you have questions. We invite you to attend the climate committee meetings or send us your questions or ideas about that. Because as was stated earlier, we're all on the same team.
Same. And this chart simply shows what folks are doing to improve Barlow's school climate. The community pitches in a variety of ways. So we've had guest speakers in the building. We celebrate Veterans Day as a community. Our teachers use the survey data to inform the design of their student learning objectives or goals for each year. Our athletic teams reach out to the community in a variety of ways, doing meaningful work, whether it be moving books to the Mark Twain Library or simply showing up to clean up a yard of a fellow citizen. Community members volunteer to serve as mentors through our Passages program, and there are so many doing the work every single day that it is impossible to represent all that is done in a few slides or in 15 minutes. There are some initiatives this year that we just wanted you to know about. The counseling office, so the school counselors, are pushing into 9th grade study periods. They are working on time management, study skills, and making connections with students. Our wellness program organized a bingo game in which students were asked to go around and ask adults, hey, have you ever flown in a helicopter? Do you play a musical instrument? And in this way, we were coercing students to have conversations with adults and make connections outside of the classroom. We continue with parents volunteering. The PTSA this year, they're doing pop-up spirit events within the school. They also, some volunteers, served as mentors and helped our students plan the homecoming dance, which was quite exceptional. And in that way, helping students really feeling empowered about what they can do. We have a summer academy program where we probably 75, 80 students moving into the 9th grade voluntarily come to summer school to learn study skills, time management skills, to get acquainted with Barlow. We have a very powerful unified wellness sports theater program where we have able-bodied peers working with those with needs. Okay. All these things are going on. They're consistently going on. And in closing, before we pass out the specific our meetings are open. The school climate committee meetings are open meetings. We post them on the school calendar. They occur monthly, right after school, and they're usually the first Wednesday of each month. Usually the first Wednesday of each month. So thank you for your time.
Start that way. Questions for?
Let me pass and come back, because I do have one. I'm
Okay,
just
we'll go past.
formulating it a little bit further. Nothing right now.
I do have one, which is, as I'm looking at the parent survey trends, the question that stuck out to me was, my child has been the target of hurtful communications through social media. And it dropped precipitously, which is great news, right, in 2018, 2019. Can you attribute that to anything that we did, or is there a sense of what we're doing, and can we do more of it?
Well, our goal is really to do more of it. We have had some guest speakers. We do use advisory group activities to target specific points of concern. It could simply be our clientele, and that we had a kinder group of kids and within the building, and that they've been hearing over time the horror stories of what happened in prior years. We continue to look for ways to tackle the problem so that it's not dismissed by students, and it feels genuine to them, and that's our goal.
So you, Jen, have been here about 20 years? Is that right?
Yeah, in this building, yeah, yes.
So, and I'm indulging myself with a somewhat personal question, but not you personally. How have things changed, in your view, climate-wise? And that would include 20 years ago, even 15, 10 years ago. How much was this even area of discussion or focus?
Yeah, I would say when I walked into the building, it was discussed, right? This is an outgrowth of state legislation. And it was kind of just considered, hey, normal practice here at Barlow, for our community, and this is what we do. With some very prominent events that occurred, whether it be in South Hadley, Massachusetts, or wherever, where students were targeted, usually with the rise of social media, that shifted everything. And I think we remain true to our core, that same core that was here 20 years ago, but social media has just changed the discourse that occurs. Everything is in fast motion. People respond so quickly, and I'm going to make generalizations, but they don't reflect in any way. They hit send. They publish. What used to be said, hey buddy, this is what I think of this other kid, now it's put out there, and then it gets retweeted, resent, reposted. Once the genie is out of the bottle, it's really difficult to put it back in. That's the shift I see. Jordan referenced just study habits. I think time on task. The other piece would be just having that phone and everything is breaking news. The weather every day is breaking news. Right? And to live in a culture beyond these walls where everything's an emergency. And then public discourse in general. Everything has to be a debate. There must be a winner rather than just listening and coming to consensus. Those are shifts I see.
I can go back to my
I have
question.
some.
You want to go first, Cheryl?
Oh, it's okay, you can go.
I don't know that my question is going to be too artfully formulated, but I have some questions about this concept that students see themselves as procrastinating too frequently. And I guess my sense is that some students can see themselves as procrastinating because that's their way of labeling themselves as not working all the time and too hard, or hard enough. And some students can legitimately see themselves as procrastinating because that's their way of giving voice to the fact that they're not working hard enough. So I guess that label of procrastination seems to me, and I'm being very inarticulate about this, to be able to have a double-edged sword. I question that some students, and I harken back to two of my kids, would say they weren't procrastinating because they weren't focused on task every minute that they felt like they should be. So I guess I caution us when we think about procrastination and students that label themselves as doing that, but there might be some that just use that as a label because they want to drive themselves too hard. And I just,
No, if I may respond, so I agree. What do the terms mean?
Right.
And on an earlier slide, we talked about primacy of the individual. And so to some degree, when you get all the stakeholders involved, including the students. So when we asked out the survey sheets that they had to fill out, some students said, yeah, that's what I do, that's how much time I spend, I got it. And other students were legitimately surprised, and they gasped, I can't believe this. And so for some students, how they were using their technology wasn't helping them or it wasn't hindering. And it's not a tool they use to procrastinate. But some students, when they called it up and said, wow, I play Angry Birds for over an hour a day.
right.
Where did that go? Why was that useful? In some instances, this isn't the first year we've taken the data, so in previous years, some students would say, okay, I deleted Snapchat because, I deleted Instagram because I wasn't getting a lot out of that, but I'm going to keep Snapchat because that's how I communicate with my friends and that's meaningful. That's a good use of time. You get to decompress.
Right.
So that's one question. What we haven't been able to get at, and we need the help of everyone, is when you are sitting down to work, what does that look like?
Right.
Because there are a number of studies that when you're task switching, if you've observed, and they've gone into the homes from middle school to high school to college-age students, so for every 60 minutes that you're working, the average time actually spent on the task is around 15 minutes, according to some studies. Now, that's for some students.
Okay.
So they're not going to say, I'm procrastinating. Some of the students are saying, I worked for 2 hours. But did you work for 2 hours? And so I'm not saying as a blanket statement, all students procrastinate. Our students work hard.
Right.
And they spend a lot of time. But are you aware of how you're spending your time? So for some students, I think they can work more effectively. Yes.
Yes.
For others, the answers lie elsewhere. So that's why the individual is important. When I look at that average data, it doesn't help me. Looking at some of the outliers, the specific students helps.
Right.
So, and that's what we have to be focused on. So, and how do we do that with all of those stakeholders in an effective way? And that's what we need to figure out. So I take your point, I agree.
And I might build on that just a little bit in looking at the concern. How am I going to be good enough to get into that college or university?
Or am I procrastinating because I merely take off 20 minutes to go downstairs and make a cup of tea or whatever? And I interrupted you, and I'm sorry.
That is tough. And I'm going to go back to Mr. Hopper's question. That's another shift, right? 20 years ago, 5 applications. Now, 20 applications, and the odds of getting in become more difficult because of all those applications going out.
Just a couple of points. So on the kind of electronic society, right, that the kids are in now, and everything's real time, and, unlike in the past, bullying, you actually would have to bully somebody to their face and see that they would actually have the guts to do that, and the other person had the guts to actually stand up to it. Now you can shield yourself behind a phone, right? So between that and the the electronic means make it easier to apply. Have you seen over time a level of stress that the kids have? And then even more severe than that, mental health issues, or for mental health, is it more just not identified? Because when we were kids, no one knew we probably had all mental health issues, we didn't even realize it.
So you're getting to the complexity of the whole thing, right? And I will say, we've had an increase in the number of mental health incidents, concerns within the building. Is it because of social media? I can't answer that. Is there a correlation? The lay person's observation would say yes. Some studies say yes.
And I guess just the survey population, this is all the grades, right? So in contrast or comparison to the ERCCC Housatonic survey, that's only 2 grades. So I think, are there overlaps in some of the questions? I think the answer is yes between these and that survey. And then are they both fairly consistent?
They were fairly consistent, yes.
There are members from the ERCCC who also serve on climate committee. And so they've taken some of the data. So some of the things that are not included in your packet are the short answer responses. And so everyone's looked at those short answer responses to inform how you interpret the data. And we're still discussing that and seeing whether we can come to agreement and translate some of what we're talking about into specific action steps moving forward. But absolutely, we've been very helpful.
That's good. So it seems like the programs that we do have and are building upon will address all the issues that were identified by both surveys. So at least we're being able to utilize same resources to solve the same problem. Okay, great. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions, but first of all, thank you for this. And it's amazing to me how the school climate initiative started from to replace the bully program, and now it's become like this tool that has all this other data, which is very useful, so I think that's great. So my first 2 observations, that I'll phrase in the form of a question, are when we were in high school, it was tough. I think everybody would say that. But when I look at the results quickly and I see that 73.71% of our students say that keeping up with academics is a factor that they would categorize as an unhealthy stress in their life. And then when I also look at the other question, which says, I feel like I'm able to keep up with my coursework, and there's barely half that say that they feel like they can keep up with their coursework, and there's another half that says, never, rarely, and sometimes they can keep up with their coursework. So my question is this vastly different from when we were in high school, or did we just not report and talk about it back then? Is there something that's changed now? I mean, do students now actually feel a much greater pressure and stress? And obviously, if you say yes, then I'm going to ask you to try to figure out where it's coming from, where it's initiating from. So I'll just give you that question first.
So I'm going to say yes, because again, I go back, this is how I couch it as a teacher of history. So if we go back at the turn of the old century, and we have all these new gadgets. We have vacuum cleaners, and we have washing machines. can we have some teachers in the building who are moving toward removing, like, the distraction of the phone during class time. And the feedback from students is, that works for me. Because they are able to be more attentive and the end product is better. So, there's so many factors at play. It's hard to.
Jen, my first reaction was, wow, 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
But then I thought about my teenage self, who's 2 years older than you are. And I thought, can I come up with 3.5 hours wasted every day?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I actually have a list for you. Petticoat Junction, Gilligan's Island,
You're dating yourself,
The
Tom.
Brady Bunch, Batman, F Troop, Star Trek, and Bewitched. And I'm sure there's others.
Yeah.
So,
Only if you got a six
but
day.
the difference
So two in
was,
the
there was one screen, and it wasn't interactive. And I also, now, people at home don't email me. It's just not true that the education that was being provided in the late 70s, early 80s was vastly superior to what we're doing now. In fact, the opposite is true. We were sorting kids, and in my high school, there were 7 ability groups. The tippity top was getting a legitimate college prep program, and about half the students were getting a academic program. And this is not some podunk high school, this is Ridgefield High School, 1981, go Tigers. We are now going bell to bell and providing a full college prep program to almost every kid here. And I don't say that's necessarily a bad thing. I think that the duty on the community, which is why I like this image you've shown us, is to understand what we're asking of kids. And the most startling data point you put up was 70% of kids taking their cell phones to bed. So 75%. So parents, do your jobs and take the phones away. Why is that hard for, I know it's difficult, but I think we're going to have to do a follow-on task to you and say, let's do some sleep study data gathering, because my 2 kids turned into Dr. Phil as soon as it was nighttime, and we had to take away their phones. And it was, to a certain degree, taking away a hit from an addict. And it was tough on us, but we did it because we wanted our daughters to have at least 6.5 or 7 hours of sleep. So this is only going to be addressed if the whole community collectively addresses it. The school can't do it on its own, which is why I'm so grateful. I see Eva's in the back and some other members of the ERCCC. It's a community thing that we got to do.
So, just to backtrack, and I appreciate all the information, but how much higher is the 73%? Or, in other words, how inflated is the stress that our students are feeling now from what used to be the norm? What effect is that having on them, and how do we best implement something to alleviate that?
I think there are a lot of ways to attack that. You asked the question in Jen's time in Barlow. This is my 3rd public high school. I've been here, this is my 12th year. Started in Massachusetts, I spent some time in Virginia. And so one thing I've noticed here, even in my 12 years, and this is anecdotal, is the students put a lot of pressure on themselves. And it impacts how they appraise the challenges. So they are very capable, they have a lot of support in the building, but sometimes it feels like it's overwhelming. Sometimes it is overwhelming, depending on what you have, and it depends on the student. But, for instance, if you pass an exam back in class, and you pass it back to students, what do you think one of the first questions they ask each other is? What'd you get? What'd you get? And so, which I banned. And I said, how do you contribute to your own stress? Why do you need to know what people that enhancing other people's stress, to making you feel better at someone else's expense. But there are so many instances of that where we increase our own stress levels in unhealthy ways, and some of that is comparative. You know, I look out into my class, and all of these students are pretty impressive, but a lot of them feel they're not doing enough, even though they're doing a great job. You know, I have a 92 average in this class, but so-and-so is so much smarter than I am. So some of this is perceived, some of it's real, but it differs from students. So to make a blanket statement, I will say in this environment, it's hyper-competitive. And sometimes they get to the point where they think, if I don't do well in this one class, I won't get into any college that I'm applying to. Now, that's not true, and there are over 4,000 accredited universities. I'd like to go to at least 1,000 of them, if I had that many chances. But their perception is, if I don't get into one of these 3 schools, it's over. So how does that influence how you appraise everything else? So that becomes very difficult to solve if you're not really looking into it on an individual level. So part of what we were talking about earlier is, what can we identify and do to get a bunch of them in one fell swoop with the program, but then how are all those other things looking to, you know, better the kids that are still struggling? And that's why there are a lot of kind of hooks in the kitchen.
That's great. And then the other one is hopefully a short, because I don't want to put you on the spot, but I noticed that the graph and the info relating to cell phone, that wasn't a question on the survey. That was something you did independently, and it appears like there's only about 48 or so students in that
55.
survey. So the question is, what is your take on whether that represents all of the students, or was that a specific cohort that you grabbed, and how was that done?
It was a specific cohort, and so I have some of the questionnaire sheets that I can show you as well. But it was a specific cohort of students. They were my students, 11th and 12th graders. I tried to do it with 10th graders. There was a difficult time getting accurate information from the group of 10th graders for a number of reasons. It does need to be expanded. It was telling. That set of data was taken twice. This was the averages taken on the 24th of October. It was also done with 55 students taken on 19 September, and the data was comparable. So was the histogram. But should we expand that? Even if we don't, one of the action steps could just be making it a conversation. So in my advisory, I work with 10th grade students. I know other people do this, and every once in a while I say, hey, let's take out our phones. How are we spending our time? Simply the task of making yourself aware of how you're spending your time can lead to changes, or at least meaningful conversations, whether that happens at school or at home, or both. But yes, this was just very, very telling for me, and kind of sent some of us in another direction. But it's not absolutely.
No, I think it has great value, and it's the topic that really we should be delving into. I just wondered, you know, again, where it had come from, and whether it was, you know, our perception that it's throughout the entire student body, which I would assume it is. So, but thank you again for all this information, and sorry to put you on the hot seat a little bit, but we appreciate everything. Okay, thank you. All right, yes, you may. Mr. Penske, you are welcome to leave, as our student reps are instructed as well. You may have homework to correct and things to do, but if you would like to stay for our riveting discussion on donations of photography equipment and so on, you are welcome to stay as well. So thank you. And thank you for your work. So we are on to letter E, which is first reading of a policy relating to wellness. And who is going to give the general overview of that policy?
guess this falls to Glenn or me, because
There's,
I wasn't at that.
I'm
Well, the
raising my eyebrows at Scott.
Yeah, the reason that this is on the agenda is this is a policy that, as all policies do, reflect latest state law. The reason this is important is it contains several sections that are associated with the National School Lunch Program, which we participate in. We know we are a part of an audit program this year for our food services,
Ah,
and it's important that our policy be reflective of the latest
okay.
standards that there are. So for that reason, knowing that it requires a first and second reading, thought it was important to start the process.
Okay, thank you. And just in a couple sentence general overview, it's just basically
Tries to align.
goals.
Right, it's aspirational in part, but it tries to align the policy with the curriculum in terms of wellness classes and studies, and otherwise says we're otherwise applying applicable law in terms of our school lunch program.
Right. And I would assume,
There's a lot in
us
here that,
being a Blue Apple winner, we are probably far and above the standards, and goals and aspirations that the state has for us. But that's just, a guess. So, does someone want to make a motion to accept, for first reading, the policy, P6142.101,
so moved.
I guess, I would say. But, so it's,
101A.
well, okay, the
And
agenda says 101, because I think there's more than A, there's,
ABC, those are the
Bunch of letters.
pages.
Right.
so 101. So Maureen has made the motion. Is there a second?
A second.
Mr. Hancock will second it.
You guys will have to figure out whether you're gonna
Is there,
pass it for second reading on your own.
is there any discussion, Mr. Hocker? Did you review it quickly and provide input, or
Not a bit for
You're-
first reading.
you're always welcome to send that
No, I
along?
have it, and you'll get my email in the morning.
Okay. Okay, so, it's been moved in second. Any more comments, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Which moves us to item F, which is the infamous donation of photography equipment. And I saw a list here somewhere. Okay, so here it is. So in accordance with our policy 3280, the administration has accepted gifts with great appreciation. And this is more informational to the board to inform us that they have accepted this donation valued at $898 from Emily Hassan, a local artist and resident in Reading. And so, on behalf of the board, we greatly thank Ms. Hassan for her donation. And so, being that this is an administrative matter, we don't need to take action, as far as I know, right? So we will just, again, acknowledge the donation and thank the donor with great appreciation. Okay. That moves us on to item G, which is, on our agenda, it is listed as Lockheed Martin donation to the robotics program, but I am going to apologize to Pratt & Whitney, because as I read the donation page, it seems like these are two donations, and actually Pratt & Whitney should have gotten prominence because they're donating $1,000 more. But regardless, I think that you know, the board and the school community in general greatly appreciates the support of these, you know, independent companies to help support our programs and our initiatives. And so,
Not to mention, we appreciate whoever took the time to write those grants and get that $5,000, because they don't just, somebody went and found that money, so
no, and
kudos.
you are absolutely correct, and I will say,
Maybe somebody wrote it
a little shout out to Mr. Paola over there, but the robotics, we could all learn from the robotics team. They raise
Definitely.
money like, you know, they really go out and seek those grants. And again, that's, you know, a great thing that they do. And again, we thank these companies. So I think we should do them separately.
Can I actually have a last-minute additional
Oh, there's another?
item? Can we get another item added to your list, maybe a new H? Because we received notice of a $3,000 grant to the World Language Department from the Weller Foundation.
Okay, so why don't we do these two separately, and then we'll add an agenda item to, well, you know, does it matter, because we don't really even have Pratt and Whitney on here either.
Yeah.
So, does someone want to make a motion to add an agenda item, acceptance of donations?
Sure.
Is there a second?
Sure.
Okay, so we're going to, make that item I, or GA, G1. Okay,
G.
and so, so for now, let's do the Lockheed Martin one in its rightful place. So does someone want to make a motion to accept the $2,000 grant?
Did we vote on
We
the?
didn't vote on my motion. to
Oh,
add
we didn't, I'm
agenda
sorry,
item.
I'm jumping ahead, sorry. There's a motion and a second on adding the agenda item. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. So we have a new aye. Sorry, I hate when I do that, I move too quick. Okay, so let's, then, again, does someone want to make a motion to accept with great appreciation the $2,000 grant from Lockheed Martin to our robotics program?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. It's unanimous. Okay. So we'll go to H. Item H, which is consideration to fund professional development opportunity. And it was phrased this way because what this relates to is the staff asked permission to recycle old technology equipment that was outdated and no longer useful. The proceeds from that sale go into a special account which requires board approval for it to be spent. The technology department feels strongly that this professional development opportunity for a member of the technology staff is of great value, and so they are requesting to disperse funds from the
Technology resale account.
technology resale account to fund this professional development opportunity. So, does someone want to make a motion to
I move that we
approve?
use, what is it, 2,840 from the the 2018-2019 sale of IMAX to cover the cost of a JAMF certification training course for a technology person.
Okay, there's a motion, is there a second?
Sure.
Okay, there's a motion, there's a second.
This
Is-
is the lame duck caucus over here.
Is there any discussion,
Yeah, whatever.
questions,
Whatever.
or comments relating to this request?
I do have a question. When we had the security discussions, I think maybe 2 meetings ago, we were talking about the multi-year or perhaps upgrading all the equipment, like the 3 different approaches, which the curriculum committee did not talk about, nor did the budget committee. But do we need, I'm assuming that we don't need these extra funds for that equipment. I don't know if anybody is here that can answer that question.
I can't answer that, but I can give you insight into the amount of money that's in the account. It's accumulated money since it was established. This is the first time a request for disbursement has been brought forward to the board. So there have been 3 different events that have generated funds for this. This is the 3rd event, this summer time sale. So the total balance of the account is $8,600. This recent sale generated $5,580. So, to the broader question, it would certainly potentially help, but it's not a material amount of money in the big scheme.
Yeah, because, so the question always comes up, so should the money from the sale be used to buy replacement equipment for what you sold? But it's still, if this is a professional development need that would be funded anyway, it's still technology related. Any further comments, questions? Hearing none, all in favor? It's unanimous. And now we're on to the new letter I, which is twofold. First, does someone want to make a motion to accept the $3,000 grant from Pratt & Whitney to our robotics program with great appreciation?
So moved.
Second.
Well, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? And that is unanimous. And then we also, does someone want to make a motion to accept a $3,000 World Language Department donation from the Weller Foundation? It's right in front of me. I think I could read it. With great appreciation.
How much was it?
Oh, I'm sorry, $3,000?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
So Vance has made that motion. Is there a second? Glenn has seconded it. Is there any further comments, discussion, or belaboring of acceptance of the donation?
And
From the Weller
purpose of the
Foundation.
program, I'm sorry.
Is world language,
World language.
it's a world language grant. It goes to the World Language Department. Okay, hearing no further discussion, all in favor? And it is unanimous as well. And again, we thank the Weller Foundation with great appreciation for the generous donation. That brings us to item 8, administrative reports. So,
Scott, you're up.
Okay. I'm going to pass around request for transfer, if you want to pass it along, please. While that's coming around, let me just speak about a few items. The first update I'd like to mention is the transportation transition that we've gone through this year. We have employee transition going on As well, as I discussed at the joint boards meeting, we have an employee retiring and a new hire has joined the team now, and that transition is actively in progress right now. I'd also like to mention that we deployed the parent app for the buses across all buildings. We did that in 2 waves in the last 2 weeks of October, and everything that I've heard has been very positive in regards to that rollout. The other thing I would mention is the replacement system for our existing HR, finance, payroll system has been concluded, and I can let you know now that the dollar amount for that for this district will certainly be under $25,000. We had passed a motion allowing up to 35, but I know at this point that it will be less than 25 for all 3 districts individually. Before I go to the budget object summary and the other standard reports, why don't we talk about this transfer request here? This is administrative in nature. There's been a change in services for a particular student, that would move from one of our budget items, specifically account number 1200-563, which is a special education account, to a different special education account, which is account number 1200-561. So given the dollar amount requested, which is $42,601, I would need board approval to process that.
So this is really a budget-neutral technical edit? Okay. So does someone want to make a motion to approve the
Making me
transfer?
work really hard
Yeah, you
here,
gotta
but
earn
you
it.
know, okay, fine. I'll make the motion.
So Vance makes a motion to transfer the $42,601.
Second.
Second by Cheryl. Any further discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. Okay.
Okay, thank you. The next up would be the budget object summary. No particular call-outs here. All spending in line with the budget year-to-date and as far as outlook. So really don't have any concerns, observations, worries, anything here. It's just going as it should. Happy to take any particular questions if there are any. But it's smooth sailing. One transfer to report, which was a subscription price that was higher than budget, so we moved some supplies money to periodicals to cover that. And then lastly, on your health insurance analysis report, Region 9 is having a very good year from a claims perspective. Our average claims year-to-date are $80,000 per month lower than what they were last year, which is amazingly low. That number will certainly increase as people move through their deductible periods, but suffice it to say, this is a very, very good year, claims-wise, year-to-date.
That's great, and we encourage our teachers to stay physically fit, do your calisthenics in the morning, and keep this up. We appreciate that. And your good health is our good health, so we appreciate that. Is that it, Scott?
That's all I have, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Should we read some of the noteworthy news stuff?
You wanna share some of that?
Is there, I always feel like, you know, our focus being our students, that we should revel in their success and accomplishments each meeting, so.
You wanna do it? You wanna call out a few?
Oh, okay.
All right, so here I go, I'll be Max.
Okay.
Our athletic program, once again, was recognized with the Michaels Cup for being a class act in good sportsmanship. On November 11th, we had a representative from NORD, which is the North National We had our Veterans Day celebration on Veterans Day, and many townspeople came in. Jordan helped organize that every single year with the help of many other people in the building. We had the Tri-M induction for our Music Honor Society. Our homecoming dance was a great success. We have Olivia Faston, Sean McHale, Andy Sue, Juliet Lamb, Graham Litz, Soren Rasmussen, and Judah Friedman. They represented Barlow at the Fairfield County Mathlete this year in the second match. We had the National Honor Society Blood Drive. We have a lot going on. We have students Zach Short and Julia Krebsel working on their Eco Sustainability Club. They are been selling bamboo utensils to folks. Mia D'Amico is working with the Kindness Club, and she helped do the homecoming parade, and Annie Gregory really helped with the homecoming parade. We have 5 Barlow students participating in the Partners in Science program through Boehringer Ingelheim Pharmaceuticals. They are Olivia Casella, Elizabeth Chan, Justin Cortina, Owen O'Reilly, and Luke Gardot. We are a code-blooded team who is presented before the board. Karen Schoenberg, Claire McCaffrey, Skylar Ray Pritchard, and Maggie Taylor, Krina Gutu. They are working with Laura Brown and investing in CyberQuest 2019. And then we continue with Unified Wellness. And we have Kiss Me Kate. Kiss Me Kate starting on Friday. Tickets are available. Come one, come all.
Thank you. And now, as I say with Max, you can leave if you like. Or you can stay.
We almost,
Oh,
We're this close.
are there any other administrative
Yeah,
reports, Dr. McMorrin?
yeah. As Mr. Rice said, we've welcomed Oliver Crouch to the central office staff. I want to acknowledge he's taking the position of Laura Ponzio, who has been our transportation coordinator, our food service overseer, and our air quality checker for 8 years. All on its own. Transportation coordination is a very challenging task, so we want to recognize her service, and we will be feting her in good style. We also have had Eileen Hepp, our receptionist, has retired, and we've not yet replaced that position. We're thinking about how to best leverage service for us. I want to take a moment on the subject of Barlow being small but mighty. This little school, one of 200 high schools in the state of Connecticut, and if we look at our staff, we see that Chris Poulos was the Connecticut State Teacher of the Year in 2007, and since then, Fred Barna has been a finalist for the Teacher of the Year. John Budd and Julie Gavoni were both semifinalists. And I'm very proud and pleased to tell you that in about 2 weeks' time, before we meet again as a board, our very own Aaron Pinsky, you might be familiar with the name, is one of the 4 finalists for the Connecticut Teacher of the Year. There are 50,000 teachers in Connecticut, so this to us is a tremendous honor. And we see Aaron exemplifying so many of the qualities that we desire in our teachers. We also, at the same event, which I think is December 4th up in Hartford, will also be, ER9 will be honoring the State Para-Educator of the Year from Reading Elementary School, Jamie Barrick-Terrace. We think that that kind of recognition is important, and all of these folks that I've named uniformly have been extremely humbled by the recognition, and it's not that we're picking the very best teacher, we're picking the very best of teachers, a person who represents us well, so we're particularly proud of the Pinsky family. Aaron Pinsky was Aaron Murdoch until a few years ago. And I'd also like to add my thanks to Vance and Chris for not just the public service they do, but both of them on many occasions have taken phone calls from a slightly unwigged principal or superintendent, and have always given me great advice and counsel, and I'm very personally grateful to both of them for that. And I think that both of them exemplify what we're all about, which is this democracy doesn't work unless ordinary folks take on positions of service in their communities. And serving on a Board of Education, not to frighten anybody, is probably the most challenging of boards to be on in a small town. And you've seen so many excellent role models in how to do that. So I'm sitting here with 3 chairs, and I say 3 chairs for all 3 of you as we go forward. Thank you.
Okay, we are on to item 9, public comment. Last chance to be on Channel 78, Cablevision. Seeing none, we are on to board member comments, and I'm going to start this time because I waited to the end to make this comment, but I really wanted to thank and commend our staff for the way they handled November 12th, which, for members of the community, this board was very diligent and very thoughtful in implementing the SRO program as a way to kind of embed a professional in the community, to look out for our students, and to be able to be that, ground floor observant of our students. And I just feel like there was concerns that came up that were thankfully unwarranted, but I think that the way our staff performed and the way the superintendent responded was commendable, and I think that it's a difficult situation to deal with, and I think that the way our staff handled everything, again, what was exhibited the utmost professionalism and thoughtfulness, and I think that it was something that was really well done. Yeah, yes, particularly Jen and Julie for that as well. So, that being said, further board member comments.
I've, individual thanks, Vance, Chris, thank you for your many years of service, a volunteer, I may add, as well, to the district and to our town. So really it's been a pleasure and an honor working with both of you. And I do want to acknowledge Paul. So we did have a budget and audit committee meeting, and Paul is on the budget committee. And Todd and I and Scott and Gina tried to get Paul to come so we could acknowledge him, and of course he didn't, but we did acknowledge him at the budget committee meeting, and did thank him for his years of service. I did want to share that with the board and also to the public. And then I guess, Mike, with regard to budget committee, I'm not going to go through this in detail, but it does summarize what the budget committee did discuss, and there's really nothing for the board to act on at this time, but it just gets on a piece of paper things that we've that we've already discussed as a board, and then what the committee did discuss is meeting last week, and that's with regard to strategic planning from a budgetary and a curriculum perspective. But it was only a formal meeting of the budget committee. So these slides are really just for the board members and the administration to think through and we will further discuss at the December meeting. So real brief update. Gina presented and team presented in August what the administration of the school is focused on in terms of future curriculum and how we could continue to provide the individualized service without, not at the detriment to the students, and then also keep in mind that our funding requirements may go down because of the fact that our student population is declining. So she teed up in that presentation, you may remember in August, three major points among many others. One, should we consider the wellness curriculum, guidelines for class size, and then committing to how we would evaluate or not evaluate moving forward with academic programs or not moving forward as enrollment declines or goes back up, as we said earlier. So the Budget Committee discussed and had a very good informal but robust discussion about potential options that we as a board should be discussing in partnership with the administration at the December meeting, and then based on that feedback, that will then guide the administration into what could be in the 2021 budget. So really we want to take, rather than just have a list of things that we may not keep in or keep in the future budget, we want to really have a theoretical, conceptual discussion about it. So here's just kind of a summary of what we briefly talked about as a committee. It's not an easy one-for-one. You know, you can't say enrollment goes down, we cut these things, but we did agree to some basic guidelines, including, you know, we have more wellness credits than we need to have from a Connecticut state perspective. Class size, if we have electives that are below 15, what's the evaluation whether or not we keep those programs? And I guess the committee gave feedback that we should have multiple criteria. It shouldn't be you have 15, you cut the program. It's you have 15, is it a prerequisite? Is it something that's needed? Is it something that will develop the whole child? So we talked about almost tiered evaluation of those programs. And then finally we talked about what programs we should look at or what programs we should not touch. And I think the overall feedback was really we should look at everything, including athletics, and say what can we really fund when as our enrollment changes over time. And so one specific example was sophomores potentially taking AP courses to minimize not just the funding, the scheduling issues that occur. Because what happens now is because we restrict the AP or honors to a certain population, you have this compression of juniors and seniors having to take all these courses at the end. So that was one idea that we talked about. So more to come. I really just wanted to make the board aware, and Scott was there. You know, Gina and Todd aren't here, but they were there at the meeting, so feel free, Scott, to add whatever else. But no decisions were made. We're not recommending anything. It's just to keep the board and the public aware of what was discussed and then what would happen at a future meeting.
Thank you. I'm going to jump to Maureen next.
I have no further comment.
Gwen? So I'll give Chris and Vance the last word. Good night, Gracie, or whatever you want to say.
Well, thank you for saying nice things about us. I know you really meant Chris when you said nice things, but I just wanted to point out that as we are leaving the board, the athletic program was named a class act, so don't mess it up, right? That's, you know, we take credit for that, and don't make us have to come back here and fix things.
No, I have nothing to add. It's been a pleasure and a privilege, at least most of the time, to serve with everyone. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. And Channel 78 and YouTube, Paul, here's your apple, okay? Right here. So, and thank you also again to Paul for his service as well. And thank you to everyone. Does someone want to make the motion that they were hoping to make at 9 o'clock, but it's 9:31?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
I'll second. This is like a
Okay,
farewell
it's
gesture.
been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.